to remove the subject from the motorcycle. At that point, a physical confrontation ensued. During the physical confrontation, the male subject went to retrieve a firearm that he had held inside a vest shirt that he was wearing. The officer immediately saw the firearm, feared for his safety, and disengaged, creating space. At that point, the subject backed up and retreated into his apartment that was directly behind him. Officers, recognizing immediately this was a barricade, surrounded the location. SWAT was called to the scene, and the motel was surrounded and evacuations had started. During the process of trying to conduct evacuations, officers approached the neighboring apartment and a shot rang out towards officers from inside the neighboring apartment. Unknown to officers, while they were outside, the male Hispanic subject had used a hammer and a saw that he had inside his apartment to create a opening, a hole between his apartment and the neighboring apartment. He was able to fit through that hole that he created in the wall, go into the neighboring apartment, and unfortunately took the female babysitter and 4-year-old little boy hostage. Once the officers were able to, during their investigation, realize that we had a hostage situation, SWAT immediately began to set up to figure out the quickest and safest way to get the child and babysitter out of the apartment. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department SWAT team and negotiators on scene immediately began negotiations with the subject via a cell phone. The subject stated clearly throughout the course of the time that he was holding them hostage and they were not free to leave. Using an extreme amount of patience and de-escalation techniques, we very, very patiently, step by step, negotiated with the subject. About 2.5 hours into these negotiations, we were able to get the subject to release the little boy into the care of police. The subject continued to say he did not want to peacefully surrender and that he was holding the female babysitter hostage. We knew he had a firearm, and we knew that he was willing to fire rounds based on the fact that he had fired them at us previously. We took this very slowly and methodically, negotiating with him throughout the entire night. About 2.5 hours ago, we were able to get the subject to release the female babysitter. At this point, it became a barricade. We continued to negotiate with him using the most peaceful methods possible to get him to surrender. After 29 hours, the LVMPD negotiations team and SWAT team was able to get him to peacefully, with his hands up, walk out of the apartment and was taken safely into custody. It should be noted that extreme care and patience and de-escalation was used throughout this entire incident. This is the kind of thing that the LVMPD SWAT team and negotiators train for and prepare for. And there's nothing more important to us than the sanctity of life, and that those hostages and that the subject were taken into custody without any injury. In a situation like this, the subject dictates the actions of an incident. They are the ones that set the tone in the incident. We are thankful in this event that nobody was hurt and that the officers did not have to use deadly force to bring this incident to safe resolution. The charges that the suspect is looking at this point are assault with a deadly weapon, resisting with a deadly weapon, carrying a concealed weapon, stolen vehicle, and ultimately kidnapping, a few counts, and attempt murder on a police officer. This investigation is ongoing, and these are the details as we have them at this point. Thank you.
Deputy Chief Larkin.
Yes, sir.
Does it seem like this was a very long, like you mentioned, a very methodical process? It seems like the momentum of the scene had been slowed considerably. Is that part of the concerted effort? And maybe you could speak to, if that is the case, why that is and why slow down the momentum so much?
So listen, this is what these guys train for. There is a time where they need to use force and move quickly, but they also recognize that this was one of those times, that time we could slow down, communicate, the subject was willing to communicate with us, and we used all of the negotiation tactics available to us to bring this to a peaceful resolution. And it is all about the sanctity of life and de-escalation. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have the name of the suspect?
They will release it once the booking process is completed. Yes.
Does the suspect know the baby, sir?
Not that we are aware of.
Any word on the fact that when an officer sees someone concealing a weapon like that, this could have very quickly turned into an OIS, and he instead chose to de-escalate the situation? Any word? Is that a typical tactic? Any word on that?
Yes, ma'am. As you know, we are constantly training with our officers all of the different techniques available to them to de-escalate a situation. Sometimes that is creating distance, and in this case, creating distance was absolutely the right thing for him to do.
Just so we have a timeline, right? When the little boy able to be recovered?
So this started around 10:30. It might have been around, and I'm guessing 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock last night.
Was the suspect wanted for anything before this, or do you know what the charges of what he may have been?
You know what? That part of the investigation is still ongoing. I'm sure that we'll have to do a later press brief. Thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it.